And welcome back to WAAAGH Tactics. We're here to talk about War Horde shining through the fog of war and the tough meta that lies ahead, as it's time for the rise of the Green Tide. Whoa! What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? So today we're going to talk about how War Horde really shine through. We're going to maybe give my little emphasis on kill rigs, in my opinion, about them. Show you guys how kill rigs are not the only way you run War Horde, but also how pigs have made their way back into the meta. And is Zagra really just universal? So, guys, it's time to talk about some war tactics. But before we do that, let's talk about today's sponsor, the Baron of Dice. So check out the Baron of Dice because they assist us in our paint competition. 5% off in the description because nobody likes taxes. And of course, check them out because they have a Black Friday sale for code BF20, so you can get 20% off. And helping out the wall tactics by hooking up some wall tactic dice that they help us so greatly. So thank you very much, Baron of Dice, because you guys have beautiful dice that really help us out, and I very much appreciate it. So that being said, let's start off with Meta Monday. So Meta Monday is out here with the stats and the facts. So we have Orks at a 44% win rate, 3 players going X and 1, no undefeated. And everybody wasn't a War Horde player. So I know some Orc players are kind of tired of playing War Horde. You know how I feel about that. That's kind of where I'm at as well. But all in all, it's super powerful. And what I really like about War Horde is it makes every Orc unit just a little bit better because everybody's one of those detachments that's actually universal. Everybody can appreciate it. So I'm never going to knock anybody for playing with it. Super good stratagems. That being said, it had 13 players with 9 Bully Boy players, 4 Dread Mob players, 4 Green Tide players, 2 Cult of Speed, and 0 to Hunt as far as we can see. Bully Boys have a 40% win rate, Dread Mob 38, Green Tide 35, Cult 30. So interesting that Dread Mob and Green Tide are really off, like about tied. Typically, Green Tide is significantly lower than Dread Mob and Bully Boys. I'm not sure if Orc players kind of, already feel stressed out enough with how the whole meta has shifted towards big vehicles. You see that Tyranids are doing good, Chaos Knights, even Imperial Knights do moderately well. High toughness things are coming back into the game, very meta dependent, and for that most part, people are taking against that. So our big boys being kind of somewhat squishy means that people that are playing Dread Mob, if you're playing it more for its fun aspect and just playing with not the most meta style, right? Let's say you're not running the WAAAGH, which is pretty much an infantry-based focused version of the Dread Mob where you're playing with a lot of Grots and a lot of Ludas and stuff. That totally still flies, but if you're running our big Gorks and Morks, the meta is twisted to killing them, as well as that's how I feel about Bully Boys too. As much as Bully Boys is awesome because you get 2 walls, a lot of the time when you really start getting to the top level, people are really good at maneuvering, move blocking, auto-seeing you. So it takes an equally high-level Bully Boys guy to pull it off. That means for the 9 players coming through, 40% win rate, you can see how that kind of worked out for them. As for Green Tide, it is a bit harder to run than people understand. A lot of the time people see a Horde army and they're like, all you do is sit up on the line and eat all the bullets and win by standing there. It's not really that easy anymore because we don't really do secondaries as easily with our boys. Like we can't just stay on an objective and fix cleanse for a fixed secondary. You have a little bit more scoring nuance involved. And something like we showed with John Holbrook, the one Orc player that with Green Tide recently that ended up going 6-0. There's ways, if you're watching on War Games Live, where he layers up his Green Tide army so that you can't really get the initiative off on his boys, making his boy mobs last a lot longer. So there is nuance there in movement, and people just don't always do as well, even though to me it's an exceptionally strong detachment. And we just got to say, guys, even with these lower numbers, which, hey, at least it keeps us out of GW's hairs from hitting us with the Nerf bat. No, I'm just kidding. That we're happy that we have 4 detachments that are quite viable to play with. War Horde, Bully, Green, Dread Mob, and Green Tide are all quite playable. So however you're running your WAAAGH, don't be dissuaded by these stats because it's always up and down with these numbers. What I really wanted to pay attention to is this week and next week, how with WCW being in play, where will the people that are winning events change? Are we going to see certain factions do better than others? Are we going to just, a lot of those people are kind of occupied, right? The big dogs are a little occupied. So who's going to come out to play, the second dogs, right? So that being said, let's take a look at one of this week's performing wall orc players. So we have Mason Welch from the Nerds. So let's see, we have it's called the Standoff 24. This was a 38-person event in the United States. I'm going to show the list real quick, like I always do, because I have it over here on the side, with Mason's War Horde list. So we have a Beast Boss, another Beast Boss with Cunning Mabrul, Boss Snikrot, a War Boss is Follow Me Lads, and another War Boss. One thing I do like about this already, really light on the characters, you know, for the most part. A lot of other armies are investing heavily in characters. I like when orc players don't go too heavy on the characters when they don't have to. 2 10-man units of Beast Snaggle Boys, a 10-man unit of Boys, because I guess Sticky is just too good to leave at home sometimes. 3 trucks, a battle wagon with the basic cannon and Ard case, a 10-man unit of Flash Skits, 3 10-man unit of Gretchen, of course, with their run herders, a commando unit with Breacher Ram, rockets, and power claws, 2 10-man units of Knobs with power claws, and then 2 5-man units of Storm Boys. So a lot of transport utility going on here. Big 10-man units. You can throw Flash Gets and Knobs into a battle wagon. You can put boys into a truck. You can have the boys, you know, jump out and something else jumps in. You can have Gretchen go into a truck, turn 1. They run out, they disembark, take that movement, stand on an objective early in the game, start getting involved early, and then just Snikrot out there to score. So when you're playing with Snikrot, he is kind of hard to use if you're not really used to having a lone out player as an org player. A lot of the time, just to start off, just basically you could leave him even in your back corner and just start, you know, or even not your necessarily deployment zone back corner, but somewhere safe in a corner near your deployment zone or your back corner, and set up for actually scoring later in the game. If you end up throwing them away early, sometimes you give people easy charge targets, easy secondaries by getting assassinate, and maybe he doesn't really even do any scoring for you because he's just kind of like standing up there scared and petrified. There are ways to maximize his lone op ability, but you got to look into how you actually got to use that. So for people who just look at these lists, right, and they go, well, Snikrot's on this winning 4-1 list, I'm bringing Snikrot. Look at the nuance behind what it means to use Snikrot. Just because you have Snikrot and Kommandos doesn't mean you're going to put Snikrot with your Kommandos. It simply doesn't give them enough benefit. A lot of the time, they're going to go early, take their position, be scoring, and then Snikrot's going to be there for late game secondary scoring. So when it comes to the utility of scoring this game, it's the boys, the trucks, the Storm Boys, and then for the most part, Snikrot. I like Zod, but Zod's not necessarily needed in War Horde necessarily, right? So he brought a good amount of units, but still a good amount of killing potential. Love that he brought double 10-man bricks and knobs. You really don't see that around anymore, right, guys? How often have we seen these 10-man units and knobs coming around? So let's take a look at his path to victory. And I do have some good amount of notes on his actual losing matchup. So we can talk about that because I think it's important that our players know, you know, as we're doing well, what do we have to worry about and what's actually going to make us lose? And why does it seem to limit us at 4-1? Because that seems to be constantly happening, right? There are, and it's funny, there is actually a Mazrok, just a chat notes. There's a Mazrok we're going to talk about today. Mazrok made it on one of these 4-1 lists, dude. Fantastic. So in his first matchup, we're going into the Obsidian Phalanx Necrons. So these are these slightly more durable Necrons. They'll kind of choose a unit and they'll choose a unit they want to kill so more people can get better at killing it for enemies. So they have their own little weird version of Oath, but really it's about making the Silent King more durable. And he kind of is becoming the focal point. Very odd detachment. I think it's a little over infatuated with right now for Necrons, but expect to see it. And so we have Emosec the Stormlord, an Overlord, and another Overlord, a Silent King, Immortals, Canoptic Spiders, Doomstalker, Locust, Lichguard, 2 units of Tronic Praetorians, and then some Tronic Stalkers. So for these Praetorians, maybe I'll pull them up for everybody and just we want to see it. Even though we won't pull this one up. But Praetorians are something you got to pay attention to if you're going to Phalanx because they actually have some utility here. They can fall back and charge. They have flying. They punch moderately well based off they can either bring additional AP or just more volume of punches, but they're just kind of like a good throwaway for this kind of unit, for this kind of detachment. Lichguard as well, right? These are both about 200 points, 170 points. Lichguards are slower. We're not, you can see one's bringing the shield and then one's bringing the the War Scythe, I don't think these are going to be the meta way you're going to see this detachment ran. Maybe 5-man units of Praetorians I can see, but you know, other than that, this guy looked like he was going too ground and pound based. That's not really going to line up well into a War Horde style of list where there's a bunch of these units that are getting punched down and punched through, like Lich Guard, Praetorians, even the Triax Stalker. It is pretty cool because this unit will shoot someone, ignore cover. So then that stacks with the Silent King, because then the Silent King can end up shooting even better, getting rerolls to 1 and hit and wound. And there is a Doom Scythe there, so there's some killing potential from the plane. But all in all, this list doesn't look well-rounded for the Phalanx. Just know, whenever you're bringing Phalanx, you are going to see the Silent King, because it kind of all just is built around him. I still don't think it's the strongest way to play Necrons, but it's a way to play the Necrons right now. So 81 point win there. Then we have and Necrons are just kind of hard if the Silent King's kind of just annoying for us to deal with sometimes. So a detachment that's based around him can impose some problems. So we go into the second matchup where he goes into Dark Angels, Company of Hunters. A bit unusual of a detachment here, huh? I believe this is the biker one. Is this the biker one? So we have Azrael, a chaplain on bike, a librarian, a lieutenant with a combi weapon, a Ravenwing command squad. Ooh, this is looking like the biker boys. An Outrider squad, Hellblaster squad, a 10-man unit. That's going to be with Azrael for sure. Then we have an Invader ATV, Landspeeder Vengeance, a Deathwing Black Knight Squad, Ravenwing Black Knight Squad. Let me see one of those in a hot minute. Repulsor Executioners, 2 of them, 2 Repulsor Executioners, and then a basic Repulsor. And then Stern Guard. I do think Repulsors and the Repulsor Executions are becoming more appealing to Space Marines players. Do you have to, tech for them in your army? No, just be somewhat familiar with their data sheet capabilities if you're going to do pickup games and have to deal with some Space Marines. As for this list, it is a midlife crisis. He was trying to stand out and bring something a little bit different. I don't think that's something you have to tech for, that version of Dark Angels. Nothing has changed to make it stand out. So 96-point win there. Bikers just ain't going to do it against Orks. We have all those transports. We could just stage up on them and beat the crap out of them. But let's move into his third matchup where he did end up catching that one loss. And we have Drakari. So Drakari is one of those contentious armies because people like to think that they just kind of suck. If the player is good, they should be able to overcome Drakari because they kind of suck overall as an army. They aren't too strong. They're really soft. They're more shenanigan-y than just being good. That being said, a lot of the time people just dismiss the fact that they are much harder to deal with if you don't really have shooting, right? Because a lot of the time the arguments you hear is that I can simply shoot away my Drakari problems. That's something that not all Orks, that Orks definitely don't have that as an option necessarily. So let's take a look at his list, and we're going to focus on the particular units here that I think you should know about if you ever think you're going to have to deal with a Drakari matchup. And even if you're not, look at these kind of units because they do pose problems. So we have Lilith Hexbrass. So she's just a killy epic character unit. She's pretty much auto-taking every unit. We're not going to focus on the obvious units like Archons and Lilith. We're going to locus on the tech piece, right? We're going to focus on the tech piece. So 2 Archons with Lilith, and then a Beastmaster. Now, the Beastmaster is something I do want to talk about. So the Beastmaster is something that people just underrate when I talk about how scouting and move blocking is a big deal. The Beastmaster is the antithesis of this, right? Of course, luckily, our boy does actually have Kommandos here, so he did have some play, I'm sure. But there's still an issue. So we have a Beastmaster unit. Now, they scout 9, and they innately move 12. But there are 7 models in this unit. Each one of them, so there's 3 Flocks, a Chimera, a Flawed Fiend, and then a Beastmaster himself. Each of these guys have different wound counts. So when I talk about ablative wounds, you'll hear me branching that in certain videos like Killicans or whatever. It means that there's multiple models in this unit that have the wounds, that share the wounds, right? So Gorkana is 20 wounds, but a unit of Killicans, a 3-man unit is 15 wounds, but they're ablative wounds because they're separated. That can be problematic for damage 2, 3, sharing damage and spreading damage in a enemy unit, and you can kind of disperse damage that way and not make it valued. That's something this Beastmaster unit can do because, as you can see, The Chimeras have 2 wounds. The Razor Wing Flock each have 3 wounds, and then the Clawed Fiend has 5 wounds, and then you get the Beastmaster who actually has 3 wounds. Not to mention all these guys are 4 toughness, so they actually have the capability to, you know, soak a couple extra 2 damage shots from your flash kits. You know, then they also have it for the Clawed Fiend. Clawed Fiend kind of offset them there too. Even like a kill rig if you start throwing some shots into them, so it could be pretty annoying. And then they can stand up in the way. They do have a little bit of damage, but nothing too, you know, respectable. It's more about that they scout 9 and then they move 12, and there's 7 models in this unit. So they just pretty much take up space on you really early. A lot of the time when I hear our players lose to Drakari, other than the fact that we can't interact with them as when we want to because we don't shoot their transports away, is that they jail you. They just put a bunch of pressure on you. And they just keep you back in your deployment while they keep scoring, and then once you table them, they do the inverse of what we want to do to them, right? So then there's Cabalite Warrior units, which you can combat squad these guys if you want. So you split them into smaller units in their transports if they want to. So then we have 2 units of Racks, and then a big brick of Witches for Lilith. A quarter of the Archons, which I did also pull this up as well. Let's take a look at that too. Right here. So Court of the Archon just has 4 unique characters. One gives lethal, one makes battle shock, the other one is subtract 1 to wound, and then the other one has fight first. So you can actually stick these guys. You don't stick right here. So in the declaration made for formation steps, this unit can join one Cabalite Warriors unit that is being led by an Archon. So it kind of acts as a big killy kind of brick that you can fight first and lethals as well. Not sure how often they pull that off, you know, but they can do it, obviously. Just keep in mind when there's Sky Splinter Assault, when they disembark from a transport, they can get lethals, and then the shooting ignores cover. Another thing here on this list is we have an Incubi, 2 units of Mandrake. So these guys have infiltrators. So mind you, he has his own infiltrators, and then he has his scouting units. So even if you have, you know, you obviously you have to roll off for it. So on the table, he can create space so you couldn't use the Mandos to deny him necessarily, right? Because he can just put his Mandrakes to create space, and then his, like we just said, Beastmaster can kind of take up space. One Scourge unit, because that's a fire and fade capability, essentially, where they shoot and scoot with their Dark Lances, which we hate to see on our trucks. 2 Chronos. So I just want to pull these up because they're super unfamiliar. But these kind of units are really annoying for Orcs because we don't really clean these guys up too effectively for their points cost, right? This is, and this guy's only 50 points when we're going to look at him real quick, this little ugly boy. So this little ugly boy has a 5-up Feel No Pain, toughness 7 with 7 wounds, a 3-up armor save, and 2 OC. He does help them get more power of pain tokens, but for the most, which he can do, he can be used that way. But a lot of the time, like we spoke about, when it comes to how do they want to play into Orcs, they want to delay you. Something like this Chronos can end up holding you back after the Beastmasters come, right? Because they want to bait you so that they can disembark, them they being the Drakari, and disembark, kind of take the initiative from you. So they're going to throw these Chronos and these guys kind of in your face. And for 50 points, you can't just kind of shoot them away with pistols and a grenade, right? Then you have 2 Void Raven bombers. These guys do have respectable shooting. So they have this one was marked with the dark side. So it's 6 shots apiece, strength 8, -4 AP, 2 damage. Again, these are truck poppers capability. And then you have the missiles that can be D3, strength 9, -2, flat 3 damage. So again, then he can actually take positions and shoot you as you don't want to, and possibly even pop your transports in that way. A Raider, and then 3 Venoms. Venoms have a good amount of small arms fire too. So clearly they have just enough transport so they're off the field. They have just enough initiative to take from you with the Void Raider bombers that you essentially can't interact with as an Orc player because you don't have any shooting. And then they can just throw them Chronos at you, Mandrakes to kind of score on their own, and a bunch of little MSU small units that can kind of chip you down. As in this version of this Orc list, you don't see a bunch of MSU. A lot of these are 10-man bricks. These 10-man bricks are getting kind of traded out because Drakari have anti-infantry. They have lance. They have small arms fire and multitude. So they have all the weapons you need to kind of kill this version of Orcs in this iteration. The anti 2+ or 4+ variation of weapons offsets the knobs -1 to wound. As we see in that fight first. And then, of course, sometimes you can take battle shock, so you can't even fight on death with your knobs because Lilith and I believe the witches Some of these units can give battle shock when you get into combat with them, and then if you fail battle shock, then you can't even fight on death in that case. So then that needs to only happen to you once as an orc player with something like these knobs, and you end up falling to the wayside there. Yeah, and then like I said, and then last, I guess I could show just for sake, like I said, the venom. So venom moves 14 inches, very quick. Guys can get out firing deck 6. Oh my god, all this stuff just came out on screen. And then they have, like I said, anti-infantry 3+ firepower. So hate to see it. Hate to see when orcs get taken out by something like that, but it happens. And it's just better that you know, the more you know when going on certain these matchups, the better it is for you. Because a lot of the time, knowledge-based games, knowledge really helps you win games in these knowledge-based games, meaning if you don't even know what the enemy does at all and it's your first time playing them, you're at a huge disadvantage. And that's something that you always hear about when you're going into Dark Eldar, that if you don't know what they do, that's why I showed you several of the data sheets, you can just straight up lose because of that. You make one move extra, one misposition in movement, and then you're getting disembarked on and charged on. So yeah, the more you know, the better. It does take a lot to do, so easier said than done, because how much homework can we really get into all this, right? How much can we really know just straight up from every single army in 40k when there's so many of them? And Dark Eldar isn't really, too known. So that being said, no problem there. He ended up losing that 50-point loss there. It just sucks because the Jakar guy got 100 points, as you can see right above him. So shout out to Jay Hewen for 5 War Tactic gifted memberships. Really appreciate that, lad. It means a lot. Super generous of you. Thank you very much. It means a lot. And we're actually going to be coming out with a new benefit to our first tier list, which will be fix my list, but not just fix my list, is that you can send them over to me, and then when I do the presentation, I'll only be picking it from members, so you can end up being featured on fix my list if you are a tier 1 member. So thanks, Jay Hewen, if you do end up doing that, because I will be prioritizing people that are going to events and performing or at leagues or anything like that when I do this. So shout out to you, Jay Hewen, very generous. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to his 4th matchup on Mr. Mason. So Mason then goes into his 4th round into Hypercrypt Legion. So that's quite the matchup to be going into right after you take a loss. I'll say that right now, because sometimes Hypercrypt, depending on the mission, can be super problematic for orcs. Or sometimes they have to interact with you and they get beat up. So we have Chronomancer, a Nightbringer, Hexmark Destroyer, Emotech, the Stormlord, Overlord, Plasmancer, Transcendent Catan. 2 10-mana units of Immortals. Okay, he's going for the volume of fire here. A Swarm, Deathmark, and Destroyers. So this is pretty much old-fashioned the Catan spam. We do have answers for that. What I was gonna say is our boy doesn't have gas, right? Gas is one of those big things that used to make a huge difference going into Catans. Not because gas is necessarily going to kill them, but because the lethals is what's going to help your beast snagger boys actually deal with them. In this kind of game, having the 10-man units and trying to just out OC people, the Necrons will actually make a huge difference. This is not an easy game by any means. It is actually a little surprising. A little surprising that they ended up winning this one. Not that you can't as an orc player, not because I don't understand how these guys can get killed and how you can't OC them, but it does take some good maneuverability. So highly really respectable to that, because even something like a battle wagon can get killed by the Nightbringer quite easily. Luckily, there is no Silent King on this list. I think Silent King makes this a very hard matchup at that point. But knowing the weaknesses of Catan is 1, they can't kill everything. 2, they lack OC, and 3, Necrons really just don't want to get close to you, right? Now that they can't do 3-inch deep strikes with their Catans, it feels a lot better, because that used to be really freaking annoying when they can end up wherever they wanted. And a lot of the time, they don't actually have the transport popping capability at range for these Immortals to get off on all the good juicy bits on the inside, unless they have a Silent King in here as well. So highly respectable win here. Shout out to you for pulling this one up. Of course, be aware, because Hypercrypt is still on the prowl everywhere. So whoa for that one, Mason. Because like I said, that can be problematic when you're going into a bunch of Necrons, Katans. You just got to stay calm and understand high OC, killing everything that's used for scoring, occupying table space so they can't drop wherever they want, and then just winning out on points, not really worrying about killing all those Katans. So shout out to you on that for great job for pulling that one off. I think Silent King plus the Katans is really brutal, though. If you disagree with me, let me know. Then we move on to his last matchup. What's up, Jim Jones? So we have on the last matchup, we have Eldari. He says, please don't exercise my rates. So we have an Artark, Way Leaper, Death Jester, Farseer, Spirit Seer, the Visarch, and Yavrin. One Guardian unit, a Wave Serpent, 2 units of Dark Reapers, a Falcon, Death Shroud, Striking Scorpion, 2 5-man units of those, a Trope, and then a big brick of Wraith Guards with Wraith Cannons. Love to see that they're still bringing that and using those Wraith Guards so they can kill almost anything. But one thing I always say when you're playing into Eldar, right? And the biggest thing when you're playing into Eldar is when they have the firing fade kind of shoot and scoop maneuvers. But there's not a bunch of that on this list. There's not a bunch of indirect fire. Really, this is one of those lists that you're just like, oh, I got a bunch of transports and a whole bunch of different units that are going to jump out and run you down. Very much suggest you do that with high pressure. Of course, the Wraith Guard can get into you and pop your wagon, but in that place, they're usually in position to get countercharged as well. Not an easy game because they can, really punish you, like the Artark Way Leaper to help them score. He'll get back up on death. They have really good shenanigans for being quick and really getting the outcomes they want on Overwatch randomly and stuff like that. But Eldar just really don't like orc pressure, transport, spamming, run you down and just initiate you, just annihilate you. So I would say this probably ends up feeling like one of his easier matchups. Not this easy one, but depending on the mission. The one thing I will say about Eldar though, they can just try to avoid using an orc player and just throw up a bunch of points and really put you on the back foot there if you're just like not used to the shenanigans. So be sure to be on your P's and Q's because they could put on some respectable points and put a gap between you and them if you let them. So 64-point win there by Mason to pull that one out. Easier said than done to win sometimes, but great job there by Mason. So let's take a look at this list one more time for his 4-1 War Horde list. We have 2 beast bosses, one with Cunning but Brutal boss Snikrot, a war boss with Follow Me Lads, a basic war boss with nothing, 2 10-man units of Beast Snaggle Boys, a 10-man unit of boys, 3 trucks, 1 wagon with hard case, a 10-man unit of flash kits, 3 10-man units of Gretchen, a commando unit because we love our infiltration nowadays, 2 10-man units of Knives with Power Claws, 2 5-man units of Storm Boys because we need the points. Can we get a war for Mr. Mason and his War Horde mob? So next, we move on to the next Orc player that I want to cover today that ended up going 4-1 with another War Horde list. This get is Bryce Bennett. So let's take a look at Bryce Bennett's list. Where he was at and then his list. So he got second place at the TLMM Layton November GT. This was in America. 39 players at this event. And he ended up going 4-1, losing his 3rd game. So let's take a look at his War Horde list. Did he say I rock? Oh no, Jayhoon rocks. Yeah, Jayhoon does rock, dude. Thank you very much, Jayhoon, like always, guys. And shout out to everybody in chat. Whoa, I was trying to get stuck in real quick because I was like 5 minutes late, so I just jumped right into it. But I see all you walls and all you gets. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. He said barely a knob. Yeah, you. He said you're Jim Jones is a knob. All right, so we have Bryce Bennett's War Horde list, and here we go, boys. It's time for the Squighog boys. I'll just break it to you right now. Squighog boys are also on the next list we're gonna cover. So we have Zagra Wartsnaga, a beast boss with Follow Me Lads, and then 2 other beast bosses with no enhancements. Then the real twist kicker to me is a beast boss on Squigosaur with Cunning but Brutal. So we'll talk about that. And then a Death Killer Word Trike with Super Cyborg Body. Then we have 3 10-man units of Beast Snaggle Boys, of course, to accompany those beast bosses. A big brick of super runs for Zagra Wartsnaga, followed by 1 small unit of Grots. A unit of Kommandos, because you absolutely gain massive value from having the infiltration to go right before your scouting. Then we have 1 5-man unit of Storm Boys, followed by a 10-man unit of Storm Boys. Yes, a 10-man unit of Storm Boys made it on the list. Another 5-man unit of Storm Boys, followed by a big fat brick of Squighog Boys, and then 2 individual kill rigs. Yes, I absolutely like this list. Let's go. This list has all the fun. It brings all the juice, all the chaotic energy and the pressure. Let's talk about it. So we already know about WAAAGH and Kommandos coming up, helping each other, get momentum, gain the initiative, actually create space for the kill rigs as well. The kill rigs can buff Snikrot or the Kommandos with +1 strength. But you know what else we have here? The Storm Boy unit. So you guys all know, but we tend to forget that the Storm Boys also have advance and charge. A lot of the time when it's a 5-man unit, you're like, they're going to do absolutely nothing. These guys suck, right? But if you have the momentum and the pressure of a 10-man unit of Storm Boys where you can possibly throw Here We Go on them, and you have a Death Killer War Trike, auto advancing 6 with the 4 of Feel No Pain, a unit of Kommandos, and then Snikrot War Snagga, followed by 1 Beast Boss unit with Follow Me Lads trailing behind them, disembarking from that rig that was created space for from the Kommandos and the Snikrot. You have a ton of front forward pressure, just running people down. So if this list goes into any of these armies that don't want pressure and don't want stuff right in their face, I'm sure they'll do quite well into them. And I'm sure he'll help contribute to his high scoring pace placing. Now, one thing here that I want to point out about his Beast Boss and Squigosaur, who's also his Warlord, is that he has Cunnle but Brutal on it. So that's so he can fall back, shoot, and charge. Normally, you have Edwapa's Kill Chopper on this guy. I'm actually an advocate for this guy coming down 15, 20 points so he can get whatever enhancements you put on him for free, because I think he's almost not worth it because he does no damage. Yet in this case, Bryce understood. Even if I give him Edwapa's Kill Chopper, I already have 3 other beast bosses with devastating wounds, flat 2 damage. I need something different here. I need something that can continue perpetual momentum and not get bogged down by my crappy movement, essentially, from these Squighog boys, and really take advantage of their durability. So he threw Cunning but Brutal on his Squighog boy brick. A lot of the time, your Squighog boy unit doesn't get one shot annihilate, like erased immediately, right? You'll save them for the wall, and then they'll come around the wall. They'll peek around the terrain, around up the field, charge in there, stab something, and then you'll lose like 6 of the models at least, right? And you have 1, 2 Squighog boys left, and then the Beast Boss and Squigosaur. He's not going to do anything anymore in combat because they lost Lance, or did they? That's where Cutting What Brutal comes in. Fall back. You try to steal people's objectives. You get into a skirmish fight. You try to hold down another enemy transport or vehicle. So that ends up becoming a utility more than a killy piece. So I really like how he did that. This guy's going to do quite well into hopefully, armies that don't want to be pressured and jumped on. So let's take a look at what he goes into for, he has all the tools to do well into them, I would say. Not that he can auto beat them, but I'm sure it helps contribute to his good scores that he put up here. So let's take a look at his first matchup. Taking a stopper to the GT. Let's go. See us next meta. So we have in his first game, he's going into Gene Stealer Cult. So we have 3 Abominants, 2 Biophages, a Kelamorph, a Patriarch, and a Sanctus. So we already know there's a bunch of Aberrants coming here. Muscle Beach making a comeback. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units of Acolytes Aberrants. 3 of them have Flamers. 3 units of 5 Aberrants. These guys have Feel No Pains. They punch very well, respectably, and they're going to get back up and come back to life, just like their character is going to get back up and actually come back to life because that's on his dash sheet capability. We have 2 individual Achilles Ridge Runners. These guys give additional AP when they target something. So everybody else that targets it gets additional AP. 1 Goliath Rock Grinder. 3 units of Pure Strain Gene Stealers, one of them being a big 10-man unit for that Brood Lord, essentially, which is the Pure Strain. What's he called in this? A Patriarch, excuse me. So this is very much how Gene Stealers run their game. I've actually had the privilege of actually playing Gene Stealers at an RTT. A lot of the time, what they're looking to do is they're going to throw these Patriarch, these Pure Strains at you. Expect them to die and slow you down because they have little invulns. They have 2 wounds a pop. And then they're looking for them to immediately come back to life as soon as possible, throw them on the field, take advantage of their high speed, and run back into you again, and constantly keep doing that. So expect the Pure Strains to immediately end up on your, in your face. They're wanting them to die, and they're wanting them to come back to life
while the aberrants essentially take position and follow up with charge, and then they rinse and repeat. They have a bunch of different little units, so they can 10-man units, so they can score with, so they can even try to slow you down and bug you down some more, so more things can come back to life, with a couple little units that do jank, like the Calamorph, who can pretty much overwatch you and I believe move or something like that. So as for are they super meta, it takes a really niche, nuanced GSE player to be super good, but when you play them, just know that continue the momentum, stuff them into their deployment zone, because you are, eventually if they do keep coming back to life, you can run a momentum, but you don't want them in position to be scoring heavily after that. You want to shove them back in their deployment zone. I know it's harder to do than said, easier said than done because they have a bunch of pure strains. But then again, you look at this list, like we said with Bryce's list, where he has Zod, he has a Death Killer War Trike, he has 10-man unit of Storm Boys in this place and his Kommandos. So 10-man unit of Storm Boys, I can hypothetically, especially if you got one Brother Carnage, go toe-to-toe with the Gene Stealer unit. It wouldn't be optimal because there's a good chance you can end up dying in return, but you can help clean it up if it ends up losing several models already. And you can even jump over that Gene Stealer unit and run into something else and charge it if you don't even want to, because you're not inhibited because the jetpack. So sure, your bikers maybe are stuck in combat because your bikers, from the Death Killer War Trike, even though there are no bikers on the list, but I meant the Death Killer War Trike himself, he can get stuck into the Gene Stealers and not really get problematic because he'll just be like, whatever, I'll charge right into you guys and flame you up, get in a fight with you. Zagrot and his boys shooting pistols at these Gene Stealers, kill them a little bit quicker and kind of help peel them away. Or you might end up using Zagrot as just a big old screen, have him act as an umbrella, take the pure strain charge on, and then delete all the pure strains in response. So it gives you options. Of course, that the pure strains can bog down your squigs, your kill rigs. Now you allow you not to position at all. So definitely have to be aggressive, and you have to understand how to position to not only soak that possible turn one charge, but retaliate, clean them up, and continue to create space. So whenever you're going into GSC, just know, put the pedal to the metal and run those little bugs over. So then we go into his second matchup, which is the Hypercrypt Legion. Again, Hypercrypt. So we got a Nightbringer followed by 2 Hexmark Destroyers and then a Silent King. A Spider, 2 units of Death Marks, 2 Doomsday Arcs, a Filleted one, 2 units of Locust Destroyers, and then a Tesseract Vault. So a little bit memeish, but just keep in mind, just say it real quick, the fact that the Silent King can be picked up and placed anywhere with these Doomsday Arc and this Tesseract Vault means that he's laying down tremendous firepower on somebody when he does. So yes, a little bit memeish. He did get 98 points here because my boy has multiple beast bosses. He's a big old unit of Squighog boys. He is going against Hypercrypt, so he can take up a lot of the table space with Kommandos and Zod, which is definitely what's going to help you in this matchup so you can actually score very well. Because believe it or not, the Silent King with those Doomsday Arc and that Tesseract Vault are annihilating your Squighog boys. They're picking up the whole unit possibly in one turn. They're dealing with kill rigs and stuff like that. But if you're able to position, because you have infiltration and scout and a bunch of fast units, and not allow them to stake up all their gun lane, their gun, lines of sight that they want, you can score heavily and heavily punish them when they do pick a spot on the table. So I really like to see it. This is one of those armies that, for his list design, that very unique version of War Horde, of this pure pressure War Horde list, does very well into something even like Hypercrypt that wants to up you down all over the place. But we look at his third matchup. This is the one game that he did end up losing. But what did he lose to? I'll give you a second to think about. Oh, sorry. Give you a second to think about it. 1, 2, 3. It was 2. Astra Militarum, which is a little disappointing, actually. Not to you, my friend. Don't worry. You did not disappoint me at all. It's disappointing because your list is the kind of list, our boys list that we're covering right now, with Bryce Bennett, is the sort of list that you would think would have a good chance of beating Astra Militarum. So, and I think in this one, it was a close game because it's a 63-point win to a 61 point. So it was super, super close, right? He only lost by 2 points. I'm looking at that right. So he only lost to this guy by 2 points. So he did have the tools to beat him. So it was sad to see that. But looking at it, you're like, ooh, he has every tools to win to beat guard. But let's take a look at some of the units that he probably used well to help win as a guard player, and some of these combos that you be aware of. Because I'm telling you what, Bryce's list was almost designed specifically to deal with something like guard. So we have Sly Marble, the meme king himself. Let's just look at him real quick, just in case you haven't seen him. So this guy, this model can shoot when you target units that are within 3 of him. Oh my god, sorry. I haven't sneezed but streamed before. That's the first time. Excuse me, everybody. And when this guy, sorry, this made me lose my brain. So after he shoots, he gets to make a normal move. Excuse me, I just sneezed, just tripped me out. He can take orders, so then he can take an order and get additional movement to his movement. So he could be moving 9, so he can end up just dipping out and just shooting all over the field and running around the field, being hilarious. He's a lone op. He has stealth. He's an infiltrator. He has respectable combat because infantry 2+. He could just kind of get in the way and be really annoying. He is kind of like a Snikrot, where it's like, trust me, I know he's on your list, and you can think, oh, he bring him everywhere. He must be easy to use. He's not. He does take a little bit of niche understanding to use well. You have Ursula Creed. She can give 2 orders. She'll most likely be in a command squad with some infantry unit brick. We have a Miltom command squad that is the Warlord. That way they can actually get outside with the Tempestor Prime as the Warlord. That way they can actually have Battle Line as their Tempestor Scions. You have 1 platoon command squad and 2 tank commanders, 1 Catachan jungle fighter unit. 3 Catachan jungle fighter units, followed by 1 big brick of basic infantry, which will go with this platoon command squad. They will get a 6-up Feel No Pain, and then most likely as well where Ursula Creed is. That way she can get Master Vox, so she can give up to 2 orders 24 inches away. So she can be spreading those orders out all over the field to those frontline. Oops, as you can see, I'll list unit up. To those frontline units that are kind of getting in the way, right? Followed by a big brick of Scions, a 5-man unit of Scions, 3 2-man units of field ordnance batteries. We'll look at those in a second. A big brick of Aquilons, a 10-man unit of Rough Riders, and 2 Lehman Russ exterminators with their auto cannons, because boy, those boys are everywhere. So of course, with his field ordnance battery, these guys have the field guns for their indirect fire. They get heavy, so they get +1 to hit. And then they get sustains 1 built into them if they're stationary, which of course they will be. They also get lethal. So they can also have access to these strats like suppression, so you subtract 1 to your hit, or fields of fire, so they get additional armor penetration. So that's just a bunch of indirect fire, which as an orc player that you hate it. Even any amount of little bit of indirect fire sucks really bad for you, because then they're picking up your little grots that you're leaving in your backfield over time. They can shoot your damage units as they're staging if they ever get popped by the trucks. If your trucks ever get popped by the tanks. A lot of the time you're talking about as an orc player, how once something like a kill rig gets popped and your beast snaggle boys get out, they get disembarked in a safe spot. Having those field ordnance batteries would suck so much. As for this sort of pressure, though, the pressure design behind this list, Bryce's list, shows so much potential so that he can actually defeat Astra Militarum and even bring it to this close of a game, because he's already starting in the middle of the table, just like the Astra Militarum player is, and he's bringing in multiple bodies that have the capability to actually clear those guard guys out and actually hold their ground, like something like a Death Killer Wartrike. And then even when the Beast Boss on Turkish Horde does come out, because he is cutting more brutal, he can continue to move forward after he makes his initial charges. You do have to worry about Zod stealing home objectives. Kill rigs can actually hurt stuff with their with their cannons. So tanks could have possibly eventually got killed throughout the game. Super, super close game to actually say who won this. Just know that I find Bryce's list highly respectable and very unique way to deal with kind of these gunline pressuring versions of armies, gunline armies, and delivering pressure into them that is a bit unique to orcs, because typically we're looking for just like a bunch of trucks and just run you down. In this case, he's bringing multitude of different units that can bring different forms of this pressure and great mobility. So great job to you, Bryce, because to even make the game this close against guard in the current state of where they're at and a lot of the tools that he had shows the fact that you understood what you were trying to do with their list, even with least, in my opinion, least optimal type of units like the Squighog boys, for example. Even though it's a very cool, idea and way to use them, that sort of unit's still getting picked up and kind of dismantled by guard to a certain extent, right? They just have the firepower and such, and a lot of units in the meta do. So bravado for bringing it. No big deal for losing the guard, especially by like a 2-point game, especially because you continue to move forward with great success. Let's talk about your game 4. So game 4, he goes into Eldari. So we have our a Avatar of Cain, Farseer. 2 units of Guardian Defenders, 1 big brick of Storm Guardians, Rangers, and then 1 Fado Knight with melee, and then Swooping Dogs, followed by another Fat Knight. Of course, like we talked about with how much, board presence this list has, there's only a matter of time until Squigs, Beast Boss, Kill Rigs, something to that magnitude really, makes contact with those rates and they get torn apart. So let's take a look at his final matchup. And let's see what he does going into his final matchup, where he goes into Vanguard Space Marines. So Vanguard Space Marines, a lot of the time you hear about them, but you never actually get to go into them. So our boy had to go into them. They can come off table edge and do a lot of devastating firepower, reactive move shenanigans, stuff like that. But let's take a look. So we have a Apothecary Biologist, a Lieutenant, Vanguard Spearhead, a Lieutenant Combi Bolter, Manius Calgar, and Uriel Ventress. Manius Calgar is disgusting. Everybody knows because everybody's talking about him. Art of War, everybody like that. Just know he's highly durable. He can feel no pain. He can reduce damage. He fights really well at twin length, and he leads respectable units. Then we have an Impulsor. Only 1 unit of Jump Back Intercessors. 1 6-man unit of Blade Guard. A Centurion Devastator squad. These guys are coming up. These guys have uppy downy in Vanguard, which allows them to actually get line of sight with all these twin las cannons. Ooh, disgusting. And I think they get like additional AP and +1 to hit. Really, really good when they come in from reserves. Then we have Company of Heroes. Very durable, respectable unit right there. Eradicator squad, big 6-man unit. An Inceptor squad, big 6-man unit with plasma. 1 Infiltrator squad, followed by 2 Scout squads. Very typical, Vanguard Space Marine type of list. Has all tools you need. Very, very niche style of play. 1, mismaneuvering against something like Orks, and you're getting run over in that play. And this kind of looks like what happened here. 98-point win there by Mr. Bryce Bennett, just because imagine how much board control he already has when starting the game, and then running you down with all the different Ork units that you're just like, oh, you're ready in my face. And of course, like someone was saying in chat, Power Call City. Yeah, something Vanguard doesn't want is a bunch of different Ork units that can cover distance very quickly and make you have to choose what you want to react to, move, and when. And if you don't, well, oops, you're out of position. I get to beat you up and crump you down. So shout out to Mr. Bryce Bennett, with War Horde for the pressure wall. Or should I say the high pressure wall? Because I really, really like that, dude. Very, very cool. Unique outlook on laying it down that turn 1. I don't even think he called a wall turn 1 necessarily. He was just in position with that list turn 1. So that being said, let's move on to our last, but certainly not least, list from the War Horde success this weekend, where we have Sean Langfield with his 4-1 kill rig list. So let me take a look at him. Let me get rid of some of these tabs I have open. There we go. So for Sean's list, he was at the GUTI Majestic Beasties 5. This was 70% people at this event, and this was in, I should have looked at this already, Canada. So this was actually in Canada. Aaron, you were here, just kidding. So here at this event, he did end up going into the 4th bracket because he lost his first game. But overall, I just want to take a look at him because he still ended up going 4-1, and because he still brought the love of the kill rig. And a lot of the time, people want to know what's going on with the kill rigs. And then I think this is, what we're looking at today is a good example of kill rig can very much lead you to winning several games, just running the combo of 2 to 3 kill rigs, 2 to 3 beast bosses with beast snaggle boys can just break the backs of so many different armies and be very pivotal into winning and giving you that latent power. That being said, you just run into some hard matchups like we've seen before, and we'll be looking at today with this very first matchup that Mr. Sean had to deal with. But As for his lift, pretty bread and butter. We have Mazarog's Crag Bag, 2 War Bosses. Boom. That's it for characters. My boy went lean and mean here. 3 10-man units of Beast Snagga Boys. No Beast Bosses in sight. 2 10-man unit of Boys. A 10-man unit of Flash Goods. 3 minimum size units of Gretchen. 3 units of Kill Rigs. And then 1 Squighog Boy Brick. Full kitted out. 8 models deep. 3 individual trucks to escort all these individual boys and flash kits around. So my boy's running around this battlefield with 6 transports and then kill rigs, no infiltration, no scout, just war hording out. One thing I would say here, maybe chat, you guys can say too, why is this not into hunt? I can give you reasons why I don't think, and I can make the argument here. Why don't you guys think he didn't choose the hunt? Would you have chosen the hunt? It's kind of sad that you don't, right? When you see so many rigs and pigs on the list that your people still won't bring it. That being said, this is all killy, boys. This is that kind of list that you're like, you know what? This is just straight up stats. I'm gonna run you down and crump you up. This is what people expect and hope from orcs when they line up against them. That being said, he had to deal with a somewhat annoying, problematic matchup list the first game, which is the Tau Empire. So, very first round, this is where he ended up losing. He ended up going into Tau Kaiyon. So I do have some, data sheets over here that we can take a look at to kind of break this down a little bit. Kaiyon gets sustained after battle round 3, and then if you're spotted, you get sustained 2. So we have Commando Shadow Sun, followed by Urethral, not Urethra, or maybe that. They give 5 of Fiona Pain to unit they're in a breacher team or Scry Squad team. They can gain CP. I've seen people just put these guys in reserve and just bring them off this battlefield edge to score secondaries. That might be a thing they do as well. Then you get a Strike Squad, another Strike Squad, followed by 2 units of Broadside Battle Suits, 2 bricks of Sunforged battle suits, which I'll show you those real quick. So I'm sure you've been seeing them around. What are these guys? These guys are essentially flying eradicators. When they target vehicles and monsters, they get to reroll wounds and they get to reroll damage. And they get fusion meltup 2s, strength 9 minus 4 d6 damage. And then there's 3 of them in the unit, moving 10 inches with the 4-up invuln. So, of course, those guys are getting position on, kill rigs and trucks and give them a hard time. 3 units of stealth, 2 units of Riptide battle suits. So these Riptide battle suits, super annoying to deal with for your Squighog boys, right? They have ion accelerators that can be overcharged to strength 8, minus 3, flat damage 4. They can get devastating wounds one time, then they shoot. They can ignore all modifiers to the hit roll, which won't matter for us necessarily when you're, that won't help with artist nails. But they also can shoot when they fall back. They do have a 2 armor save and a 4-up invuln and a respectable amount of wounds. So they can even kind of try to withhold one of your charges sometimes. And they don't just fall over outside of that. They do get plasma rifle shot as well with twin link. And just between all that firepower, besides the battle suits, they also have a ghost keel, 2 hammerhead gunships, both with rail guns, and then 2 individual piranhas. They're like these little vehicles that kind of throw themselves up the field. Really good for move blocking trucks, really good for move blocking Squighog boys. They're respectable size, and they make you take battle shock. I believe like at the end of the movement or the beginning of shooting, I'm not sure. But they can end up making you take battle shock on like a Squighog boy unit, then you fail it and you can't even hardest nails with them. So that would be really, really problematic too, because you get picked up even easier. So yeah, that being said, you could see how this would be a tough matchup. All the stealth suits infiltrating to create a line, so your rigs and your trucks have nowhere to go, and then you're pretty much running into rail guns, you're running into riptides, you're running into hammerheads, you're running into ghost kills, you're running into sunforged battle suits with rerolled wounds and damage. So that's what I'm talking about when I think of kill rigs. Kill rigs are definitely playable to just straight up win games, stat check people, run guys over, stage up and wall, all those things. But there's just straight up armies that know how to move block you and then blow you away. Talent Empire being one of those. So Sean, no shame there. You just don't literally, you chose to wall out. You brought the pigs, didn't have the tools for it. Just happens. I'm sure you know that when you make that kind of list, right? You're like, I just didn't bring the tools. But you know, if you ever wonder why people do say bring infiltrators and scouts and stuff like that, is because if you don't have something like those tools, you simply have no answers to some matchups. So let's take a look at the rest of his matchups, because as you can see here, he scored huge. He ended up winning his bracket after this, and pretty much getting very, very, very high scores after that. So even though, yes, the kill rigs did fail him round 1 and he got pretty much blown off the table with Tau Empire guns, he was able to pull out 4 wins right after that, which still feels really good and is a successful day out of at a GT, if you ask me. So his second matchup is Gladius Task Force Dark Angels. He had to deal with Ezreal, Apothecary Biologist, Chaplain, and Terminator Armor. It was 6 aggressors, a Deathwing Terminator squad, another Deathwing Terminator squad, and then another Deathwing. So 3 Deathwing Terminator squads, an Eradicator, 2 Infiltrators, Scouts, and then a Vanguard with Jump Pack, followed by 2 Gladiator Lancers. You know, it's pretty much just, can you deal with Deathwing Knight Terminators? I'll tell you what, having auto hitting last cannons from your kill rigs makes that matchup vastly different than if you're just running at it with straight damage too. This is one of those games where you have to remember just to continue the momentum. You still have a ton of moral seed in them. They aren't one-shotting, you know, your kill rigs. If you charge them into the Deathwing Knights, you can pull them away from your other units so they don't punch away your boys fast enough. So really the main problem here for if I got to kill something quickly, if I don't want something to kill me quickly, is this aggressor squad. Today I have this aggressor squad, and everything else kind of just doesn't play the mission as well anymore. And of course, there's a big brick of Vanguard jump packs, right? But you're playing War Horde, baby. You ready to fight on death. So then let's take a look at, because he got 100 points there for Dark Angels. Let's think about his third matchup, which he goes to, and no, the Big Mac does not screen all, does not clear all screening issues. No, some of them yes, but not all. If he could charge through enemy screens, he would. But because he has to simply move or advance, you know, it's not as easy. So then he goes into his third matchup, where he goes into Awakened Dynasty Necrons. So we have a Chronomancer, Luminar Caesarus. This super, super cancerous, this guy. Funny we lost Mazrog, but he still exists, right? With the 4 Feel No Pain, giving his army as battle line units additional AP and reducing AP, and an aura. He's infantry with 2 of armor save and a 4 of invul. Love it. We have an Overlord with a translucent shroud. 2 of those guys, a Royal Warden, which is super slept on because for 40 points he allows your immortals to fall back and shoot, and then a Scorepack Lord. Scorepacks are making their appearance again. 1 big brick of immortals, followed by a Reanimator, 2 units of Death Marks, 3 Doomsday Arcs, a Flayed 1 unit, 2 units of Lichguard, and then a Scorepack Destroyer, because these guys are making their comeback. Respectable volume, they get dev wounds, they can get rerolls to punt fighting and stuff like that. Aren't too scary for Orcs though. Again, we're seeing the Lich Guards. Lich Guards coming back into the game, but Doomsday Arc are something you gotta be very, very aware of, my boys. Very aware of. As for what's going on here, you're gonna take the Chronomancer, Luminor Caesarus, the Royal Warden, and you're gonna stick them near each other for their mortals, so you can get more potent firepower from the immortals. So good volume coming from just that immortal list. Be careful of that. And then all the Doomsday Arc, they have flat 4 damage, strength 14 weapons, and then a volume of strength 4, I think, lethal weapons. So just know that they're coming out to play, Orc players. Very much coming out to play. You're going to see a lot of Doomsday Arc making all the way out of their appearance. For the most part, they do have very low toughness, and they rely on their invuln a lot. So having volume of Beast Snagger boys, kill rigs to run them down and punch them, squigs, eat them alive. You do have to kind of play either full on KG, because the Doomsday can hurt your kill rig so bad. But in my opinion, most of the time, depending on the mission, I'm going to say run these boys down, because they can kill 1 kill rig, but they're not killing all your kill rigs. The 6 Feel No Pain throws off their math. And really, the best way to always deal with Necrons is to straight aggression them off the table, try to full one-shot their units, and try to tag them as they can't do the shenanigans and fall back a lot of the times. And, you know, you want to stage up to like one-shot their units like Scorpacks, Destroyers, you know, if you can, the Lich Guard, tagging the transport, the Doom's Arcs. But right here, he ended up getting another big win with a 98-point win there. Then we go into his fourth matchup, which was Grey Knights. Grey Knights do not like seeing triple kill rigs for a couple of reasons. So we have Brotherhood Librarian, followed by Castling Crow, Nemesis Dread Knight, Caldor Duego. We have 1 unit of Terminators, followed by 3 units of Strike Squads, 3 units of Inceptors, just 5 more units, and then a small unit of Paladins, followed by a big unit of Purifiers. This is like an MSU version of Grey Knights. I don't think that's where Grey Knights should really head. I think Paladins are super slept on if you bring a big brick of them. Hard for people to kind of displace them and bunch of Dread Knights. But it seems like Grey Knight players are kind of tired of that. That archetype's kind of fallen away. So kill rigs feel really good, my boys. What can I say? You know, we've seen how they got run over by something like Tau. But not having 3 kill rigs in a matchup like this is huge, is a hugely, you know, a vastly different experience than running, let's say, just a bunch of trucks, right? Of course, in trucks, these guys don't have good potential to popping them, so you can still kind of stage up and charge into them. But kill rigs allow you to be like, oh, I'm just gonna overwatch your Strike Marines. Oh, I'm just gonna overwatch your Terminators. Oh, I'm just gonna shoot your Terminators because you're standing over there and I can auto hit you. Haha. Something that, you know, they don't really have to ever experience with going into Orks, and Orks don't really have as an answer for their 2-up armor saves, you know, and stuff like that. So it feels really, really good. A lot of the time, again, just like we're talking about with Necrons, you got to put high pressure into this. You're running 3 kill rigs. I know kill rigs aren't like super, super durable where you can just throw them in the middle of the table and they'll survive. But you throw 3 of them at people, knowing that they're going to kill at least 1, and then you just get in their face with the other ones. That's really what you got to do. It's a stat check. And when you're running into Grey Knights, they can't really deal with that stat check because they don't deal with vehicles. Kill rigs do have a good enough toughness, and they have a 6 feel no pain and a lot of wounds for 155 points. So if they focus on your kill rigs by any means, then everything else just kind of gets to freely run off the table. Take advantage of that. Then we go into his last matchup where he goes into Dark Angels again, and this is the Stormlands Task Force. So we have Asriel, Samuel, Chaplain on jetpack on bike. I mean, another Chaplain on bike, and then a Tech Marine on bike. That one's a legend. That's weird. Intercessors followed by Outriders, another Outrider, Ravenwing squad, and then 3 land speeders, a Ravenwing Dark Shroud, and then a speeder. Very cool. You know, I'm sure this guy was catching people off guard all over the table, maybe throwing up high scores, being fast maneuverable. But boy, you hate to see it when you're going into 6 transports where once you pop them, the stuff inside gets out, beats the crap out of you, beats you out on OC, and then walls into you and holds you in place. So shout out to Mr. Sean Langfield for going 4-1 in Canada. Shout out to the triple kill rigs. Whoa! Because the kill rigs might not lead you to being undefeated and winning your whole GT, but I'll tell you what, they'll help you get up that win-loss ratio real quick with that super effective, cheap stat check. Let's go over this list one more time. We have Mazraj grab bag, 2 war bosses, 3 10-man units of Beast Stagger Boys, 2 10-man units of Boys, a flash kit, 3 10-man units of Gretchen, 3 kill rigs, a brick of Squighog Boys, then 3 individual trucks. I do like that Maz allows you to fight on death, and once your squigs are kind of dead, you still have to deal with Maz. I still think that's a little bit slept on. Sadly, Maz isn't as potent as he used to be, but that is always, you know, gonna feel good when they kill all your pigs, and then you have just Maz stand there like, "What's up? I still got to feel no pain to 4-up info," and you're like, "Ah!" The enemy still doesn't like that. So, everything here, what I like about his army is he runs into you with rigs and trucks. You kill all these transports, and then there's just a bunch of bodies. Like a bunch of 10-man bricks, bodies fall out with 2 OC, and then you still have all the pigs that are running you down after that as well. You kill all that, and then by that time it's turn 4, and you've lost out on scoring. So love to see it, Sean. Really straightforward and linear. I think some people could just understand that, yeah, kill rigs have a lot of flaws, but sometimes bringing enough of them for this point cost is just a straight stat check, and they give you so many utility and tools that you don't simply have with other orcs, because kill rigs are more of a support unit than, you know, the outright killing and back in you know, all comers slash problem solvers to everything on your list, right? They don't solve every problem you have. They don't deal with every enemy and bad matchup that you have, but they give you options, and options gives you, you know, at least a chance to come out on top, which that's all we need as an Orc player, right? So shout out to Sean Whoa for his Great WAAAGH and War Horde going 4-1. So that being said, boys, Orcs are making their appearance again. You should be very, very happy as an Orc player because we have so many detachments. You can play either a direct linear game of just straight up kill rigs, battle wagons, trucks, War Horde, running them down people's throats, playing a cheeky, shooting Daka wall with reactive moves from Dread Mob. You can play a hyper elite version with Bully Boys, and even using 20-man units of mobs in that, so you can still take advantage of Orc Boys, high OC, and movement shenanigans from charges. And then, of course, last but not least, the Green Tide, which is bringing the rise of the Orcs back onto the stage. Probably the highest ceiling for Orcs, because right now the meta is just all over the place. Now that vehicles have kind of made a comeback, Green Tide might be the faction that does best. So we'll see at WCW. I covered those lists. We'll see what those players end up doing. Shout out to those guys, and everybody else is doing great with the wall. So now that those big dogs are out to play and deal with each other, who's gonna ride next? Who's gonna rise next week in the meta? What cool niche list will we see, and will it give rise to the Green Tide? With that being said, there's always one thing to keep in mind: is don't cross a wall because we knock your teeth out.